Welcome back to part two of Buy-Sell Agreements with Stephen Bowles and Mark Zinman.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is I have two partners. You or I could die, so we care about our family.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily we're saying, well, if I die, then we have to do it one way. If you die, we have to do it another way.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Well, and with your partners, you lose a partner, you do care about how am I settling this out with that family? Because that's where we're going back to harmony. Do you want to be in court for the next 12, 15, 18 months because there's a dispute over the valuation and there's all these emotions involved, or do you want it to be very clean, like this is what's agreed to? There's really nothing to go to court over.
right, and there's other things too. Like you and I are talking like there's two partners. You can have five partners.
You could have five.
And
Absolutely.
you can have some people that like each other and don't like each other, or some people who are best friends and not best friends. We're not talking necessarily about you and me who've been in business together.
Yes.
We know each other, we know each other's kids, we've been to each other's family events. That may be a different relationship.
Mhm.
We're talking about a business relationship and a business document that needs to hold up no matter who the partner is.
Correct. And you could start out as best friends and not in the future. So we've all seen that where business comes between the friendship. So
Well,
you don't want to rely on that.
I always say, and I've dealt with it a number of times, I mean, when people have arguments, it's business divorce. We don't call
Yes.
it a business breakup, we call
Yeah.
it a business divorce, because it's just like a divorce of married people.
Mhm.
There's emotions involved, there is valuations involved, of I bought this, you bought that, and maybe not agreement. So we want an agreement that is absent any emotional input.
It's as objective as possible.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Which really brings us then to the more likely event. So statistically, you're more likely to become disabled. Everybody's statistically going to die at some point, but not necessarily while they own the business. During your working years, you may become disabled. So what do you do if a partner becomes disabled and they can no longer function in the function that they were bringing to the table? So that's why it's helpful to have a triggering event in there that
Well, let me
talks
ask you a
about
question about
disability.
it. So there's disability where I'm going to be out for 2 weeks having surgery,
Right, yeah.
and there's disability where I've had a stroke or some major event and we don't know when I'm coming
Mhm.
back. So define disability and how you would handle that in an agreement.
This is going to be long-term disability triggering event.
Okay.
You're not coming back to work. You're
And
not going to be
do we-
functioning.
I think I'm coming back, you don't, so do we usually set a months in there?
No, it's usually have language in there around a doctor's opinion.
Okay.
You want that to be the case.
Is it a doctor's opinion and length of time?
Length of time, yes. So if it's going to be short-term, long-term, those types of things that you can cover with the disability insurance that you have on the books, and you can say, hey, they're coming back in 6 months. We're there for you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you are leaving the workforce, but you still own part of this company. So how do we deal with that?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So we're talking about somebody who may bring value. I'm an accountant, a plumber, whoever it is. I'm going to be disabled. I'm sharing with you and asking you if you agree. The most normal one I see is if it's going to be longer than 6 months, that's considered to be a permanent disability.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
most people would agree with that. Yeah.
So
But
it
to
takes
the-
out the fact that I think over the next year I'll recover.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 6 months, that would be theoretically the trigger. I can't come back to work in the capacity and that's another question.
In what capacity,
Right.
and so on and so forth. Which is, this is bringing up the good point of why you want to define it
Right.
as much as possible. So it depends on your business. Your business may say, hey, it's the type of thing where you could come back in a limited capacity and still be fine, but you can't go visit homes and repair their plumbing in a limited capacity, right? So the business type matters. If you're on Zoom all day, maybe you can still do that. But if you're out there in people's homes, or you're out there selling, you're out there going to conferences, you're the face of the company, and you can no longer do that, then you may have different parameters for how you define.
So
that for
I
your
would say
business.
that in my experience, it's a hard 6 months.
Mhm.
That tends to be the definition if you can't return within 6 months. If you wanted to offer that person, because you're friendly or they bring some
Mhm.
value, a job, like you.
A job.
Okay,
correct.
so ownership of a business and employment in the business are two different things, correct?
Correct.
We agree with that. So
Absolutely.
just because you own a business doesn't mean you have to be an employee, and just because you're an employee doesn't mean you have to own
Correct.
stock.
Yes.
So we're only talking about the ownership part here, not the employment part. So
Mhm.
if a person wasn't coming back for longer than 6 months, that in most of the buy sells that you see, and I've seen
Mhm.
as well, that would be a triggering event for
Yes.
this. Okay,
Yeah.
now explain to me how we got that formula. how are we funding the disability in the same way, an installment sale, perhaps with disability insurance? What are the methodologies of handling that today?
So the methodologies would be the same. We've got our triggering event, we've got our valuation that we agreed on, how we're going to get to that valuation, and now we're going to exit them from ownership. We can do that through the installment sale. We can take on debt to pay it. We can, or we can get insurance. So on the insurance side, obviously life insurance isn't going to help with that. You can get disability insurance that's only for executives that pays out in a lump sum like a death benefit. So those
And did the definitions of those triggers be like 180 days, which is 6 months?
Correct. Yep.
And permanent and disability, and so it would pay that lump on the 181st day if the
Yes.
person's unable to return.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So that can be structured to pay out as a lump sum, more like that death benefit. Now you've got cash to say, hey, we're gonna exit you as an owner of the business. We can do that now and we're not relying on the cash flow of the business, which may or may not be hurt by your exiting as well. So that is that would also be a common way to kind of cover that risk. And with anything with insurance, you're deciding whether or not you want to retain the risk or you want to outsource the risk.
So
if you want to outsource it, it's executive disability insurance.
So let me just talk about that again. I think most people that are listeners are familiar with life insurance.
Mhm.
It's based on age, it's based on health, it's based on all that stuff. What is disability based upon? And like, how would I think if I'm sitting here talking about how I'm doing my agreement, I'm talking about disability, I'm trying to decide whether I want to look at an insurance way or look at this installment way. How would I be able to maybe figure out how that figures into the calculation?
Yes. So there are some similarities in how that's underwritten and priced. In that, yeah, your age does matter, your health does matter to some degree.
Does
but
my
also,
occupation matter?
Occupation matters.
Okay, so I'm a roofer as opposed to an accountant.
Correct.
Okay, that doesn't, does that count in life insurance too?
It does not.
Okay,
So
that's
unless
not-
you're in a risky business, you're piloting, you're a race car driver, you're scuba diving.
So
those types of
driving
things.
over the speed limit, like my wife says, I'm not really a race car driver. Right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Record that because I'll play
Yeah.
that for her. She says, stop racing. Okay,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Correct. But occupation, those are identified, and then there's codes for that, and that goes into how it's priced out. It's also a little different than life insurance in that you buy it, you have to qualify every 5 years for it. So you can't sit there and say 30 years.
I'm assuming that you would recommend, and I would as well, once we get through also, and I know we have more to go through on a buy-sell
Yeah.
agreement, that we would then look to fund it with life insurance, look to fund it with disability, and if we found that was prohibitive, or the choice was we're more comfortable with the installment, we could still default that way. And if we want to decide
Correct.
2 years from now we wanted to get life insurance, it doesn't necessarily change our agreement.
Correct. Yeah, the agreement is not dependent or contingent on life insurance.
Or
life
disability.
insurance or disability insurance. It just would help fund it if there's that event,
Got it.
and you're not relying on cash flow and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So,
So we talked about life.
mhm.
We talked about disability. I guess the third one's withdrawal.
Yeah.
Right. So, and withdrawal is I usually find it with and without notice, right?
Yeah.
So when you want to maybe talk about what withdrawal means and what it is.
Sure. I mean, we call it retirement earlier. Retirement's typically planned, and you have some heads up. But it could also be something that we also mentioned, which is, what if you cross the line legally? What if there's a bankruptcy, personal bankruptcy? What if there's a divorce?
Or you have to have
could those
you have to
things-
use your license to practice as an
Lose your
accountant,
license,
and that's something
professional
that's required.
license.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, those could all trigger it as well. And so those are important to have those same items in there. How are we going to come up with a valuation? How are we going to fund it? Because you can't just necessarily kick an owner out, right? Now you can have language in there of saying, hey, you're being exited because you violated company protocols. That can be in there as
And
well.
those triggering events are identified: loss of license,
Correct.
personal bankruptcy,
Yes.
or whatever else might be.
Yes.
Loss.
Yeah. HR violations, those types of things. Yeah.
A conviction of some kind of criminal conviction.
Yes,
Like you wouldn't
yeah.
be able to hold a license in your thing if you had a criminal.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. And if you're speeding, no. that you'll still get
It's only 20 miles over.
Yes.
It's when you do 21 miles
21
over,
over,
that's
you're in
considered
trouble.
to be a
Yeah.
withdrawal.
It's
I
a
got it.
misdemeanor then.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that one's also important. Yes, there are ways to plan for that too. One of the best things would be, I'm not going to go to life insurance as always the solution, but you need to have some sort of a side fund if you're going to exit somebody at retirement. You're not getting a death benefit, you're not getting a disability insurance benefit. So how are you going to fund it? Can you replace them and fund it through installment sale? Do you take out debt to just pay them off and then keep moving on? Those are a couple of the options.
So I think that you and I would both agree that if withdrawal was from retirement, it's a known runway. I'm going to retire at 65, I'm 63. We know that Steven's leaving in 2 years. I'm more likely, since I got grayer hair, leaving in 2 years, right? So it doesn't change the agreement. Now we can have a discussion amongst the partners of how it's best to fund your buyout. Using the language that's in there that might say, oh, we have this ability to pay it out over time. Do you also find that in agreements where maybe it's an involuntary withdrawal that there's a penalty attached to the valuation?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
let's explain what you see there.
Yeah, so involuntary withdrawals usually have something in there that says, here's the penalty to that valuation that's going to affect what we have to pay you. And so that could be a percentage. It's typically a percentage that says.
Right, and just so the audience,
it's like a discount.
I mean, think about it. Nobody chooses to die,
Yeah.
per se. Nobody necessarily chooses to be disabled. But there is some choice in whether you lose your license, get
Break the
convicted,
law, yeah.
whatever the triggering events are, you have some control over it. So the reason why we would penalize that person is for two reasons. Number one is that they had some control over it, and number two, it has the same sudden effect on the business, but it's somebody's fault.
Correct.
Okay.
And it could have a reputational impact on the business. Right? So they're going to be publicly connected to the company, even if you're exiting them as a result, and so that impacts the value. So it is typically in there as, hey, here's the penalty if that occurs. And it's, again, agreed upon way in advance is the ideal notion. You don't want to sit there and try to get these things documented when you suspect your partner of potentially having that kind of behavior.
Okay, so let's summarize where we are so far.
Yeah.
Okay? We're forming a business, we're more than one person. We should, at the same time we're forming the business, immediately have some kind of a partnership or shareholders agreement, depending on what you are, and we should have included in that, or as a separate document, this buy-sell agreement. That includes other things, but the main three we're talking about are death, disability, and withdrawal. Okay? And that best practices would be to have a formula. The best practices would have that formula to be calculated by an outside party who we either agree upon the three names or maybe the credentials of that person that's going to do it.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
If we don't have a name of somebody, it'll be, this person who's certified by whatever
Yes.
thing. And then after we do that, then we need to decide if there's any options of minimizing our cash flow risk, like life insurance or disability, to help fund the two that are sudden and not elective. Okay.
Correct.
Who does this work? We do it we go online and pull down an agreement. We ask ChatGPT. We hire an attorney. What's the best practice there?
Best practice is hire an attorney. A lot of times when you see agreements that do not have all of these metrics is because somebody kind of did DIY, or they were working with a different attorney that doesn't specialize in this space, that put operating agreements together and doesn't do this all the time.
So am I looking for, am I looking for, I'm saying a business attorney.
A business attorney.
Anybody who
Yeah.
classifies themselves as a business attorney would be somebody who we would assume would be capable of doing this.
Correct.
Okay.
That's going to ask these same questions. So people hearing about it on the podcast might be taking notes and be like, oh, do I have all these things? You don't have to be the subject matter expert. You hire the subject matter expert to make sure it's done correctly. So if you're doing documents online just to get started and so on and so forth, you're probably going to miss a lot of those because they're not going to be in the prompts.
I'll share that I have no problem with somebody researching, maybe doing some stuff online, but you never sign the document that isn't done by an attorney.
Correct. Yeah.
Because they're going to think of things that you don't have. I know, for example, like I read a lot of agreements and sale. I said I did a lot of M&A work. And so I look at it for all the accounting pieces, like what's the sale price, what's the allocation, whatever. But I'm not looking, it's under the state of Pennsylvania, it's subject to this rule, that rule. They would know those language because they've done a zillion other of these And so they'd have
And different
experience.
jurisdictions and so on and so forth. Yeah.
It's also the same thing. It's not what you have, it's what you don't have.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing when I talked about people out doing tax prep. People say, well, why can't I do my own tax preparation? You could.
Mm.
You could absolutely do your own tax
Mm-hmm.
preparation, but, you know, it's the difference between doing 1 and 100.
Thanks, Mark and Stephen. We hope everyone found the information shared in this episode to be valuable, and thank you for watching or listening. Let us know your thoughts down below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the final segment of this 3-part series, and wish you a fun and safe New Year celebration in the meantime. See you in 2 weeks. All content provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only. No representations are made as to the accuracy or completeness of information that is presented. On the Mark, its owners, collaborators, and guests will not be liable for any errors or omissions, nor for any losses, injuries, or damages from the use of this information.